Spears. I don't know if my guest enjoyed that as much as me. You did know some of the words, I noticed.
I did. A bit scary, wasn't it? Yeah.
It took us all back. I absolutely love that. I so vividly remember her first appearing, National Lottery. Remember that programme? It still exists, I just don't watch it, on a Saturday night. And she was the live performer, and I'd never seen anything like it. And it was 17 years ago, so I was a very different age, very impressionable. I thought it was wonderful. Now, it's 20 to 6. It's Thordis here at Drive Time. And to mark World Mental Health Day today, a psychotherapist has been speaking out about mental health and inviting people to join in the conversation in Cambridge city centre. Mark Newey, who's an expert in treating stress, anxiety and depression, invited people to drop into his pop-up clinic outside the Guildhall to give advice on the critical issue that affects us all. And he's in the studio now. First of all, thank you very much. After a long day at your pop-up clinic, you've now come all the way into our studio. How was it today? How did it go?
Oh, it was brilliant. Just engaging people in a conversation is because that's what it's really about. You'd be surprised, people will share quite intimate details, actually. It was lovely. And a completely different range of issues, which is what you always get when you're talking about stress, anxiety and depression. So people with different backgrounds, different problems. That was wonderful. And it's all about starting the conversation on mental health.
Anybody who sits in some kind of city centre location is going to get a certain amount of scepticism and avoidance tactics. But certainly if I walked past a pop-up clinic, I'd probably do one of those long, circuitous routes to make sure I didn't cross paths with anybody. Did you find a bit of that? And did it take a bit of persuading? Because we all now presume that someone's just trying to get money out of us, sell us something, con us.
There was one of two reactions. I mean, the way we started to engage the conversation was just, did you know it was World Mental Health Day? So it's a non-aggressive sort of just an open question, and people would either stop or they'd walk straight on, and that's fine. You know, who knows what they had going on. So there was nobody nasty or it was fine. It was absolutely, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable day, actually. It really was.
And it is World Mental Health Day. We've heard bits and bobs. There was just some reference to it and to mental health in the sports news. It does feel like we are better at talking about mental health, better at maybe understanding that it's your health, it's mental health, in the same way that we don't mind talking about physical health. Do you feel like that as someone who's much closer to it than me, that it's getting better?
It is, without a doubt. And actually, do you know, we've got a huge amount of thanks to Princes William and Harry and the Duchess of Kent for that. They've made an enormous difference. At the London Marathon, their Heads Together campaign was sponsoring that. And it's fundamentally changed our ability to talk about these things. And that's what we need. We need it to be an acceptable, normal topic of conversation. And it should be. We don't say, well, he's physically, ill, but we do say that about mental illness. And actually they're the same.
Is it just that we're getting better at talking about it and we're getting better at diagnosing that makes it seem like there are more mental health problems? Or are the pressures of modern day life putting us under greater pressure and stress and giving us problems?
Without a doubt. I mean, the increase in the youngsters who are struggling, that's the scary thing. And I think that's the indicator that things are getting worse. And a lot of it obviously is social media. But even in my own little practice, 5 years ago, I saw 4 16 to 25-year-olds. I saw 45 last year. And that's just my little practice. That's a tenfold increase. However, I think the awareness, particularly for youngsters, there's an awful lot of statistics coming out, the Mental Health Foundation particularly, and Young Minds, they're doing a lot of work in this area, raising the visibility, which is what has to happen. And the earlier somebody can start talking about their problems, the easier it is for them to sort them out. 20 years ago, I had a breakdown. I was struggling for 5 years, probably. And in those days, you just didn't admit it. You probably barely admitted it to your family. You just kept it under wraps. And that's when the problems start to multiply. So if it becomes a normal topic of conversation and you can talk to your mates about it, when you just realise that you're just starting to struggle, that's a whole different ball game from even 6 months later when everything's starting to go slightly pear-shaped.
For anybody who is listening right now, who maybe sometimes it is about admitting to yourself that you're not necessarily coping. That can be one of the biggest problems. What should people do if they're in need of some help? What would be your top tips,
I think
recommendations?
find somebody you can trust. It's always a slightly dangerous thing to do, but if you've got somebody, a really good mate that you can trust, and just say, you know, I'm struggling, I just want to talk about this, and actually just speaking about it. They don't have to give you advice. You don't have to have their advice, because they may not give good advice. It's actually just being a sounding board, just the ability to talk about it, because when you don't talk about it and you bottle it up, that's when things get much, much more difficult. So, you know, I would always say to people, if you can, find a way of talking to somebody about it. It eases, it gets it off your chest, and it starts the process. Because in many ways, putting your hand up and asking for help is the most difficult thing.
Something tells me there's going to be a lot more of Mark Newey on the Drive Time show. Thank you very much, Mark, a psychotherapist and expert in treating stress, anxiety and depression, who's been giving talks today in Cambridge City Centre. Perhaps you were one of the people who's stopped and talked to him. Thank you very much for coming in.